Good afternoon and welcome to today's Adweek webinar, where we will be talking about the state of sports sponsorship. And really what we're going to be sharing are some of the results and discussion of the key findings of our sponsor CORE's annual State of the Industry report. I'm Stuart Feil, Vice President of Content at Adweek, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, I just want to take a few minutes here, make sure everyone knows what to expect from our webinar today and also is familiar with the various features of our webinar platform. Our presentation should go somewhere in the 30 to 35 minute range. Afterwards, we are going to have plenty of time for audience questions. So if at any point during today's presentation, if you have a question for our speakers, just simply use the question tool that you should see on your screen, probably right underneath where you're seeing my video right now, and use that to submit your questions. And again, we're going to get to as many audience questions as we can following the live presentation. It's not too late to invite your colleagues to come and join us today, and we'd really love it if they would. To make that easy for you, we sent everyone a final reminder email for today's event about 15 minutes ago. In there, you're going to find a link to the registration page. So grab that link, send it off to your colleagues. They still have plenty of time to register. Come on in and join us live. But if they can't make it live, and someone already asked a question about this, so if they can't make it live, or if you can't make it or stay live, today's webinar is being recorded. It will be available on demand, and we're going to send you a link to that on-demand recording later this afternoon. So just check your email about 3:30, 4 o'clock Eastern time. You should have that link. Even if you just have a regular link and you head back here, you'll get the recording. It should play automatically at that point. So again, 3:30, 4 o'clock, check your email when you get that thank you email from us for attending, or the sorry we missed you if you're seeing this later on. You'll see the link to the on-demand version. If you are interested, and we know people often get this, in a PDF of today's slide deck, you can grab that right now in the event resources area. But there are 4 things in event resources that I want to point out. One, of course, the slides, and you'll see those marked as slides, so feel free to grab that. Secondly, we do have available in there the full State of the Industry report from CORE. So head on into event resources. You can download the complete PDF of the full report and engage with that afterwards. You'll also find links to the Adweek resource library, where we have a variety of guides and research studies and white papers available. So check that out. And also, of course, the Adweek webinar calendar, www.adweek.com/webinars. Where you can go and see what webinars we have coming up, and also our full archive of on-demand webinars. So be sure to check that out. Let me move us forward here and quickly introduce our speakers. First off, from our sponsors at CORE, very happy to have RJ Krause, who's going to be leading this. He was the co-founder of sponsorship platform Hookit, which CORE acquired back in 2022. And at CORE now, he focuses on developing a platform that empowers brands and rights holders to more effectively manage, measure, and optimize their sponsorship portfolios. And RJ is going to be joined by 2 really experienced sports partnership and corporate partnership people from major teams. From the Denver Broncos, we have Kristen Kuhn. Kristen's VP of Corporate Partnerships, joined the Broncos this past year, where she oversees, of course, partnerships for the team, and previously led that at the Major League Soccer's LAFC. Which under her leadership became one of the top 3 revenue-producing clubs in that organization. And then we're also joined by Matt Lenio. Matt's VP of Global Partnership Sales and Strategy for the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL, where he, of course, leads global partnerships. He's also, again, experienced across the board, monumental sports, which is the Washington Wizards, the Mystics, the Capitals. and also was Director of Corporate Partnerships over at the Utah Jazz. So with that in mind, let me very slowly, because this is no longer easy to actually bring everyone up on screen. So very quickly, I'm going to change the meeting layout. So if we can bring our speakers up, here they are, and thank you. RJ, over to you while I go off camera.
Excellent. Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate it. And thanks for everyone for joining. Like Stuart said, today we're going to be going through a summary of our annual State of the Industry report. And lucky to have both Kristen and Matt today with us, as we're going to be going through the 3 top findings, and then we'll be discussing with our partnership executives here on how the trends and the insights have resonated with them and their teams, and also to showcase some specific examples of how their teams are leveraging the trends and approaching some of the challenges. So really excited to get into that. And what we hope that everyone on this call gets out of this is not just the insight, and you guys have access to the full report, so please download that, and the trends, but also just some key takeaways that you can actually use in your day-to-day, whether you're a rights holder or a brand. Some examples that Matt and Kristen give on how they're approaching challenges, how they're working with their partnerships, teams to create more effective partnerships. So we hope that you get some of that out. And then at the end, obviously, we'll go through the Q&A section where you can ask some specific questions of us. So first, I'm just going to go through some background on CORE, kind of as some context as to why we're positioned to create a report like this. So we've, over the past 20 years plus, we've really been dedicated to helping brands and rights holders create more powerful partnerships and fan connections. So we have a suite of products that help both sides to optimize their fans and their partnerships, utilizing software, data, AI, and a team of experts to do that. So we work with about 1,000 of the top brands and rights holders in the sports and entertainment space, and really we're focused, laser focused on helping them create better partnerships and better fan connections. So one of the things and kind of the big part of our platform and really a huge area of focus for us is on really combining the management side of sponsorship and partnerships with the measurement side and really connecting the dots there. And that's really the basis for a lot of the insights and the data that we're able to surface within this industry report. The report itself is comprised of 3 main data sets. So we have aggregated anonymized sponsorship deal data from the rights holders and brands that use our management products. So a lot of really interesting insight there around spend and assets. We have, after the acquisition of Hookit, which I was co-founder, like Stuart said, we have a massive database of social media data, so we can look at and see how fans are engaging with rights holders and how they're connecting with brands and the rights holders partners as a result of that. So some really interesting things we can extract from that. And then new this year in our report is actually results of an industry survey. So we're really excited about this. We asked 27 pressing questions around the future and the challenges that come in our industry to both rights holders and brands, with about 1,700 responses. So some really good info there we're going to go through. So without further ado, we're going to drop into the 3 of the key findings here, and then open it up to discussion on each one of these and talk about them in a little bit more detail. So what has 2023 revealed for us? Number one, brands are spending more. So spend is up 4% year over year, but there are fewer deals. So 14% fewer deals. So brands are expanding their partnerships with the partners that are driving the most value for them, and driving the most ROI. And good news for the industry as a whole, spend is up, but some of that, the partnerships are definitely getting consolidated. Number 2 is that after a bit of a lull, a dip and kind of flattening out after COVID, where all content was consumed on social media. We are now seeing an increase in fan engagement, viewership, and brand value year over year. So 10% increase year over year in engagement, 26% increase in video viewership, and a 3% increase in the value that brands are getting out of social media. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that comes to fore in terms of sponsorship deals, and how both Matt and Kristen and their teams are leveraging the great medium that is social media. And then lastly, and where we're going to spend most of the time, is that clear consensus that sponsorship is an extremely powerful marketing channel, but it comes with its challenges, right? It's not like a simple Google ad that you can throw up there and you have whole kinds of data to look at and see performance. Sponsorship has a lot of different facets to it, a lot of different folks that are involved. And so we'll go through some of the challenges that have been surfaced, and then and Matt and Kristen will kind of talk through how they're meeting those challenges. All right, so number one, we're going to drop into the spend. So what we're seeing, what we've from the data, the data that we have, the sponsored deals that we have, like I said, more spend, fewer deals. Majority of revenue is coming from signage and entitlements, as it has forever. But we're seeing an increase in specific digital activation spend. We're seeing the majority of spend coming from a couple different sectors, and we're looking at we're seeing some new categories actually emerge. Rights holders that are focused on that. So, Chris and Matt, I'm gonna cut it over to you guys and just kind of ask broad question, right? Like, how does this resonate with both of you in your day to day and within your teams, and what are some specific examples you're seeing in terms of partnerships that maybe have increased?
I'll jump in. So RJ, I think from the team side, I think there's a few clear wins for both the brands and for the teams on the sponsorship front when you go to lowering the number of partnerships that you have. So I think from the brand side, immediately it declutters your space. So you're able to stand out a little bit more, whether that be within your own category, if you're a hotel, if you're an auto partner, whatever it might be, it immediately declutters it. And I think it helps enhance your brand and make you more visible. Then from the team side, it's oftentimes like, as much as you want to establish partnerships with as many, brands as you possibly can and grow revenue, sometimes you spend as much time, or a sales rep will spend as much time, or the team will spend as much time on a partnership that is a $50,000 a year versus a $500,000 a year partnership. And so I think from the team side, it's definitely helps us free up some inventory and then maximize revenue opportunities where we can focus in on some of those partnerships that are able to come in at a larger amount. And again, it's a win for those brands that are able to do so. When you go from competing against, I saw this when I was at the Jazz. We had for a number of years done partnerships for almost at any level, and then we came in and had a minimum threshold. It helped us really quickly determine, which brands and partners could come in, and we saw that definitely help our salespeople and grow revenue year over year, and then provide more value to the partners.
Excellent.
Yeah, and Matt, I would
anything similar there?
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said, and I think just also to add another benefit to the brand, it is a delicate balance of understanding how to meet a revenue goal internally on the property side, but also still provide that maximum visibility and ROI to a brand. But with additional brands comes additional opportunities to also partner together. So one of the things that, on the team side, what we look at is when we're bringing on incremental categories or brands and going through exactly what Matt said in terms of how does this align with our objectives and who we want to be aligned with, is how can those partner brands also work together? So looking for brands that complement each other in a portfolio, or brands that can cross promote, between a C-store and an oil company, or between a consumer product and a retailer, so that we can start to double down on those partnerships and also bring new opportunities to each of them. Yes, we're growing our partner portfolio, but we're also growing opportunity there. And the other thing I would just add on the general takeaway that you've found, I think a lot of people now are protecting against the future, right? We're in a state where things are changing rapidly, faster than they've ever changed before. And with that, we don't know what a company is going to look like in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years, or 20 years with some of these larger naming rights deals that we're seeing. And so when we think about a larger spend, that usually is correlated with larger categories and wanting to protect against the growth opportunity for what's coming. We see this a lot in financial, right? And Matt, I'm sure you've had this too, where it's not just banking, right? It's mortgage, it's banking, commercial banking, private banking, wealth management, right? And we go through the whole list. And as we start to look at that from the property side, there is an interest, I would 100% reiterate, Matt, to have fewer accounts, both because it's less crowded space, but also offers better delivery and service from the team side. But also those are revenue opportunities that we are taking off the table for the future, right? So that does come at some incremental investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. So I love the idea of like identifying partners that could be synergistic, right? Where you're making that connection to two different partners, but maybe they can work together. 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing. That's really cool. And then in terms of the categories, so you're looking at basically subcategories and how to identify potential partners that might live in multiple categories. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, I think, it really, like Matt said, every team has their own strategy on how you go to market. Some people are, really keen on dicing up categories and getting every single piece of the category that you can. Oftentimes that's more budget friendly, and sometimes we need to do that. But in other circumstances where someone might be planning to launch a new part of the business in 2 years, we might want to look at them more holistically across the entire category rather than having 3 or 4 different independent pieces of that business and looking at it as one general partner, again, with allowing opportunity to grow both the partnership and the category rights.
Sure. Cool. And we'll touch on this on kind of the third segment, but I think that a big part of expanding with your partnerships is having that flexibility and also understanding their objectives. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But thank you guys both on this. So generally though, this trend is resonating with you both.
Yeah, I think absolutely from our side. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think your the areas that your study had found too in terms of logistics and insurance and travel are all a direct correlation from the past few years, right? And the pandemic, we saw a boom in consumer buying with logistics. We've seen insurance categories sort of change pending what's going on in different states like Colorado and California and Florida. And travel, just generally speaking, is back up, right? We had the biggest Memorial Day travel weekend just last weekend. And so identifying those as growing categories are great for the property and something that I would say also resonates with where we're at today.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you guys. So moving on to the next key finding here, social media, social engagement. So this is a world that I've lived for 20 plus years. We started tracking social media basically right just after Facebook started in 2007, 2008. And so it's just been a continual increase in the platforms out there, the number of people that are engaging in social. It's an amazing tool and channel to utilize for a couple of reasons. From a rights holder and brand perspective, is that you have a direct connection to your fan base. You can see what resonates with them in near real time. And you can integrate your partnerships into that mix and really bring them along for the ride and connecting with your fan base. So it's a great tool, great channel. What we're seeing is, like I said earlier, increase in engagement, increase in video viewership, massive increase in viewership, and as a result, an increase in the value that brands are getting out of social. We're also seeing more specific line items related to digital and social. And we're seeing all the major kind of assets, entitlements and such really being incorporated into the content that's being generated. We're seeing teams, rights holders create content departments and focus a lot more on the content and really thinking about how, what the fan wants and what they're, the content that resonates with them and that they're engaging with. So, again, turn it to you guys. Like, what are you seeing in this world? Obviously I'm sure it's a pretty big focus for you and your teams. But is some of the findings from the report resonating with you, and how are you actually, capitalizing on this medium?
Yeah, definitely. I think RJ, I think one of the reasons you're seeing, you mentioned viewership, engagement increasing. I think one of the reasons why that is definitely true is because of the kind of the evolution of the way that, sports teams have, integrated and sold and packaged in, social and digital media assets into the partnerships. So I remember, years and years ago, when I first started selling, and I was including, if it was Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, posts as part of deals, a lot of times they were almost working independently. And this was pretty standard. I think a lot of sales reps were saying, we're going to give you X number of posts in your partnership. And then after the deal was established, you were trying to figure out, how do you integrate some of those brands into what you're doing on social? Because it was relatively new. And the problem with that is the engagement rates were lower because a lot of times what teams were doing is they were almost having like a generic ad, come to this restaurant and today's special or coupon is X. And what was happening is the engagement rates were low. The value for the brands was low. People were unfollowing, unsubscribing, from whether it be email blasts or whether it be social media. It just, the engagement wasn't there. And so now I think there's been a shift and a focus really on the teams creating the content that's valuable, that's engaging for fans, that's a value add for fans, and then having the brands align, their marks, logos to some of those campaigns or programs or whatever it might be. And then I think also, rather than have a lot of these social assets, work independently, what you're seeing now more is that they're complementary pieces to whatever those core pillars are within their package. So a lot of times we'll say, like, okay, here's their 3 or 4 different campaigns that this partnership is built around, and we're going to support it with email blasts and social media and digital media, whatever it might be. And so I think that's a lot more, specific to helping them see success rather than, just kind of throwing darts at the beginning, what you saw, years ago.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's something that we try to drive home on both sides. Both our rights holder and brand clients is that you don't want to be overtly advertorial, right? Like you want to have more organic integration of the brand into the content. We have a metric called promotion quality, where we look at 0 to 100%. 100% is basically looks like an ad, right? And so bigger logo, a lot more text. And what we see is that as you get closer to 100%, your engagement starts to drop. So there's a sweet spot there. And so we can use metrics like that to understand kind of where that lives. But to your point, being thoughtful about integrating and having, cross-channel campaigns that are, more content oriented than advertising oriented. I think that's
And RJ, I think that's a great point, because I think there still are some, for example, in our industry, like in sports, there still are some teams that are doing some of those kind of ads that are more generic ads, and they're going out to their email distribution lists. And sometimes the challenge that we face on the team side is that some of these brands are like, oh, well, I did it with this team, or I've seen this done with this team, I want to do it with you guys. And for example, with us, like that's just not something that we want to do, because we know, and the data shows that the engagement rates decrease and fans unfollow and unsubscribe when it is just an ad that gets pushed out versus, something that's enhancing the experience of the fan. So that's definitely a good point.
Yeah, it's an important takeaway for the brands that are on the call. And yeah, Kristen, I know that you talking about content as a key driver here. I know you have some examples that you want to share.
I was going to say it's almost too simple, but it's really the shift in our industry that has moved from sponsor to partner, right? And that's why we use those words today, because this is a partnership and we want to enter into that back with brands as well. So simply, treating anything that you're doing with a team's social media the same way as you treat out of home or a CRM strategy in-house is not the same, right? The point is that we are working together to meet your objectives, and we're leveraging each other's marks and rights to provide a benefit to our fans. And so exactly what Matt said, like using the same ad, across many different properties, or even, even within the sports industry, you can have the same campaign, but I think you need to figure out how each team has their local spin on it, right? And being able to customize that to your partner so that you don't become an ad. So, and yes, absolutely. I think just to take it in a little bit even further direction, I think when we look at engagement on social changing, a lot of that is because the audience is changing, right? And a lot of teams are looking at growing a younger audience. I just read a stat that our screen time is down to 7 seconds now before someone scrolls on to the next thing. So we have 7 seconds to make an impression on somebody and gain their attention, as well as the format that you're delivering it in. So, younger generations are preferring a vertical format. So when we think about partners and what that content looks like, are we putting it in vertical, or are we putting it in horizontal? And what platforms are we using? For example, our YouTube channel is 90% male, whereas our Instagram is 50-50 female men. So, each of those, when, we go back to the original sales strategy of doing posts, that may not work. What a brand wants to accomplish may not work just based on one post. We have a variety of different platforms and different handles even that we can share from that are cultivated to communicate different types of information.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, actually, and something that we talk about quite a lot is that use each platform to the biggest benefit you can, right? Like each platform has a different audience, has a different kind of lead content type, different spin on what people are engaging with, and so we've seen generally some people try to do the cookie cutter approach where one piece of content shared everywhere, and that's just not the way to optimize. And like you said, the trend that we're seeing as well is short vertical video. Obviously with Instagram Reels and TikTok taking the lion's share of viewership, that's basically what people are expecting today. Fans is that type of content. What we see perform really well is POV, kind of raw footage, behind the scenes, anything that they can't get in like a typical like TV broadcast. Usually resonates quite a bit more with fans. So glad to see that that's resonating with you guys. Cool. So last key finding here, and the one we're probably spend the most time on, honestly, is the just sponsorship. And like you said, Kristen, really good call out, right? Is that the industry generally is moving towards the term partnership. Obviously, mostly because that's really what it's all about, is just brands working with rights holders together to connect with fans in a meaningful and organic way. And so, that's really the benefit of this industry and this, means of marketing, is that it is more emotional. It's more connected. It's not just a straight ad. And so that comes with its own challenges, obviously. Right. And we'll go through each one of these, but number one, alignment is critical, with so many moving parts, things that change all the time, from a brand's objectives to the type of platforms and channels you can use to engage with fans. You basically have to stay connected with your partners as often as possible and have really good communication. But we've seen that on both sides of the coin, objectives are one thing and alignment is one thing that really could be worked on. Interested to hear from both of you, maybe starting with Kristen, on what are you guys doing to meet this challenge? How are you? What things have you employed to basically ensure that your partnerships are meeting the objectives that you've set out?
Yeah, it's definitely really important. And I think, again, for everybody listening, the statistic around not knowing what your goals are and how to meet objectives is really important, because, again, when you're entering into a partnership, you're making an investment, you're spending a lot of time against this. It's really important to have alignment, like you said, RJ, on what we're trying to achieve here, right? And the other big part of that is that it can change. We understand that your KPIs and objectives may change. You have a new CEO, a new CMO, the brand strategy shifts, right? We're here to help navigate that and shift with you. And so you said it, but I think, early and often communication is really important to be able to course correct before we sort of go off the rails, right? So we can do that a number of ways. One, surveying our fans and using survey data across, global or national databases to be able to continually gauge and ask, are we meeting your metrics? Are you gaining in your brand awareness or your aided or unaided recall, right? All those types of questions. And then also doing, a check-in, whether that's an impression recap, a reach report, at least once a year. But hopefully, you're having some type of more frequent check-in, whether it's based on a campaign, an entitlement night, even just twice a year on your standard summary of partnership elements. But really, like, what are each one of these assets tied to on your end in terms of an objective, and how are they performing? And again, doing this early, not at the end of the year where a whole season has passed and we're past the opportunity to shift, is really important. And I think the data part of that is what's really great, because we can actually show with data how we're performing now. And sometimes that can be a little scary on the right holder side, but that's also, an opportunity to talk about it and say, hey, this doesn't look like it's working, right? Is it working for you? Because it doesn't seem like it's working. And, how we want to make sure that you're happy and that our partnership is successful for you. How can we look at changing this?
Yeah, that's a good call. I was just going to say, I think I was going to intro you, Matt, but because I think you have some good info on this, is like, objective setting in the beginning is critical, right? Understanding what your partner's trying to do and trying to get out of this, out of the partnership, is key, and like staying on top of that and communicating often about it. But yeah, Matt, love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like identifying what those objectives are, I think it's, there's a lot of responsibility that, we have, like from the team side of things, where we should come in really trying to not necessarily have an agenda in mind, where we come in and ask enough questions to really understand what are the priorities, who are the brands trying to reach, what are some things that have and have not worked before in the past, how are they going to judge the success of the partnership, in 12 and 24 months, 36 months down the road, when they're looking back and saying, was this a win or a loss? What are some of those, key metrics? I think that's the responsibility that we have, and then to present, ideas and options that are going to be a good fit. And then I think there's also a responsibility that we have where, it's important as the partnerships evolve. You talked a little bit about, Kristen talked about how objectives can change and priorities can change and leadership can change. We have to be flexible on our side. So the way that we try to approach our partnerships is, looking for that constant communication, which we talked about, that feedback throughout the partnership, is being willing to adjust on the fly, whether it be mid-season, end of season, really just being welcoming to feedback, good, bad, indifferent. The good, so we can lean into it, the, indifferent, and then the bad, if we need to change anything, that we're willing to evolve with our partners and to make sure that they're getting the maximum amount of value. So from the brand side, it's great when we get that feedback, when we hear, get that constant communication. That's like something that we want, because, and as we're looking for a partnership to renew or refresh, we don't want to be looking across the table, and saying, oh, well, we didn't know. And so definitely we're welcoming to, the things that we need to improve upon and change from our side too.
Yeah, that's key. And, we've heard that time and time again from brands is, their partners that are more flexible are the ones that they tend to expand with. And being able to change on the fly, not whiplash, but being able to change to their changing objectives. And then from the brand perspective, I think that a lot of brands feel like rights holders know their objectives, but they aren't as clear as they can be. So I think that's key. You hit on it, early, often discussion of objectives, really great communication, the ability to be flexible. If you do those three things, then alignment will come. Moving on to the next challenge. So, and I'm mindful of time here, so we'll probably just cut at this, and then we'll go through some of the full findings of the report. But in terms of measuring impact, so obviously, if you set your objective, you know what you're kind of going for. We've definitely heard from both sides a major challenge in the industry as a whole, and it's one of the reasons why we're laser focused on it at Core, is that measuring that impact. There's a lot more data available now, but it's also kind of data overload. Being able to wrangle it and put it into a format that helps understand the performance of a partnership is difficult. So how are you guys approaching that within your organizations?
I think from our side, oh, sorry, Kristen, you go ahead. Go first.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think from our side, one of the most important questions that we can ask is, how is this partnership going to be measured? What are some of those key metrics that are going to tell us if it was a win or a loss, if it was a good partnership or a bad partnership? And then I think in order to, like, every team is going to be different. Like the Broncos are going to be different than the Golden Knights, and which assets are going to resonate the greatest among our fans. I think that one of the biggest challenges that we have is to kind of get away from the nice to have assets and focus in on just the must have assets. So once some of those key metrics are determined, I think it's really important that we go all in on what's going to deliver your greatest results. I think years ago, it was great when you could, for some certain types of brands and companies, top of mind awareness is really important, but that's not necessarily a fit for everybody. And it might be fun to see your logo, run during a game, but if that's not going to help really, you achieve some of your primary objectives and goals, then that shouldn't be something that we include as part of the partnership. So I think just getting a clear understanding of what are those key metrics, if it's app downloads, if it's growing social, whatever it might be, I think that we need to go all in on specific assets elements that are going to deliver the greatest results.
Yeah, really good call out.
Yeah, and I think, again, to everything Matt said, I agree with, and I think just in terms of getting a little bit more tactical on how to measure that, it just comes back to, what are you expecting, right? We can deliver any type of report, right? It just depends on what you want, right? I've had a CMO want to see every single 14 billion impressions down to the line item, and RJ, we can do that with all the data that's available. But like you said, that can be really overwhelming. And you can send a report out and it can get lost in translation as it's passed along and loses some of that context. I've had other people that just want to see 3 numbers. They're evaluated on 3 numbers. They just want a quick 1-page recap, right? So I think getting aligned on what that expectation is on how we're measuring it and sharing it is just as important as what we're actually doing to get everybody on the same page, I guess.
100%. Yeah. So like, if you have your objectives set properly and everyone's clear on that, then the next step is, like you both said, really focusing on what are those couple metrics, those couple KPIs that you can use as an indicator of meeting those objectives. And then don't try to boil the ocean, right? Like, figure out how you're going to measure this, and then, measure it often and communicate often. So thank you both on this. I think this is probably a topic we could have an entire webinar on and talk through a lot of details here, but some interesting trends. I think not a big surprise, but thank you both for kind of sharing how you're attacking these challenges. So just to close, some key takeaways here. I'm not going to read through all these, but you all have these slides, as well as you can download the full report. But just like we've been talking about, kind of alignment is critical. Collaboration, communication is critical. Being really selective on your partnerships. So, going into a partnership that has synergy to start with, that makes sense for both sides, is key. It's going to make everything a whole lot easier. Measure the things that matter, and focus on those channels like social and digital that not only connect you directly to the fan, but also give you that feedback loop and the data to be able to kind of improve. So outside of these, do you guys have any closing remarks on things that you're seeing as related to our State of the Industry report?
I think just from my end, for any of the brands that are listening, like what you said, RJ, we do come at this as a partnership, and we want something that is beneficial to our fans, to our organization, and obviously that's going to help reach your goals and objectives. So your bullet on selective partnerships is really important. We had the opportunity to work with a lot of people, and again, just as you're protecting your brand, we're protecting ours. And the most fun part about being in this business is coming up with ways to do that together. So I agree with everything that your report has shown today. I think it's an exciting time. And again, encourage everybody to continue leveraging sports partnerships to drive different KPIs internally.
Yep, and I would just echo exactly what Kristen said. For us, we look at our partnerships as long-term and not just, quick 1 years or money grabs. Like, we really do want our partnerships to be, indefinite. And so I think from our standpoint, it's important that we're always going to be flexible, that we want to find ways to evolve with the partnerships, with our partners, with their brands, to deliver the results that they're ultimately seeking. And, starting off on the right foot, making sure that we understand and align well. No partnership ends well that doesn't start well. And so it's important for us to make sure that we have a clear understanding and maintain that good communication, throughout.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for the time. I think hopefully this was useful and helpful for the audience here. And again, this full report's available, and the three of us are available too. So any questions that have been asked, we're going to turn it over to Stuart here and go through as many of those as we can in a short period of time. But know that any questions that were asked, we will respond to them. So drop them in there, even if we don't cover them today. We'll respond back to you, in the next couple of days. Stuart.
RJ, you're stealing my thunder. That's it's great. Listen, really great presentation, and just so good to get the expert opinions, from Matt and from Kristen on this. I just think it's really great to not only hear the what you're finding out, but really understand what's going on, as I said, in the trenches on all of this on a day in, day out basis. We are going to take audience questions, and I do want to invite the audience, as RJ was saying, submit your questions. We're going to get to as many as we can. What we don't get to, we will send over to our sponsors. So there is time for an offline response. A few things I just want to point out. First off, I'm going to go back here to the conclusions and takeaways slide. And just notice on the bottom, you'll see a little link there that says Take Survey. So if you download the slides as part of this, click on the link. At that point, you'll get over to Core's survey so that you can be part of the 2024 research that will come in the 2025 report as part of this. So we just want to make sure that those that want to feel like they can have their voice as part of the survey that goes along with the deep research that Core takes place, that's available. I'm going to actually now take the slides down so that we can move into questions. I also want to remind people, because if you've got colleagues interested in this, today's webinar was recorded. It's going to be available on demand. You're getting a link to the on-demand version from us about 3:30, 4 o'clock today. Share that link with your colleagues, or better yet, have them register. They can come in at any point and over the next 12 months and watch the on-demand recording of today's webinar. Let's get into these questions, because I want to make sure that we have time to get to as many as we can. And so, RJ, I'm going to start off with a question here. Someone who clearly knows the state of the industry report, and one of the things that you usually have is that list of top brands earning social value. So that's always a good eye catcher as part of this. Tell us a little bit about this year's list, and what were sort of the big changes that maybe you saw on some of that.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously there's kind of the usual suspects that are in the top 20. The big apparel brands, Nike, Adidas, Puma, some of the beverage companies, Red Bull, Monster Energy, that have large spend. But different from last year, what we've seen is a pretty big movement with some of the Indian conglomerates. Cricket is becoming more of a kind of a world sport, and so Tata Group over the last 2 years has seen a major impact that pushed them into the top 10. There's some other noteworthy brands. So EA, with their La Liga partnership, and some large influencers have moved up quite a few spaces. MasterCard, with their, massive global events and backing of like UEFA and Champions League and some of the other major deals that they have pushed themselves, up the ranks as well. So yeah, there's definitely some outside of kind of the usual suspects. There are a couple brands that have moved up the list based on some pretty critical partnerships that they have.
Got it. Question came in, and so I'm going to, Kristen and Matt, I'd love to hear your impact on this. And this is coming from someone who's part of a national brand right now and is trying to understand sort of like going about and choosing partnerships on the local level, right? How do you determine, right? There are so many teams, so many venues out there. How do they really sort of like go about deciding the difference between sort of the national and then the audiences for in specific geographies? And again, there are obviously, as teams, you also have national followings in this day and age as well. So, Kristen, let me just turn this one to you, and maybe some of the things that you've seen on that. What would you would recommend in terms of identifying those key areas?
Sure. So I think if I'm understanding, the question is, how does a team determine if they want a national partner or a local partner, or on the brand side?
Or how does a national, maybe flip that around, how does a national brand, how does a national partner identify that what I'm going to say are the local teams and the local interests where they really want to be in market?
Got it. Well, a couple of things. I think one, it depends on your brand strategy and your product. Ultimately, is your product a national brand, or do you have key cities where you're looking to double down, get some extra promotion in? Maybe it's a competitive play where you have a competitor that's headquartered in that market, and you'd really like to gain some share there, and so that's a little bit of a lane grab that you could do in someone's backyard. But again, I think that I don't want to speak for any other leagues or teams, but I think that every team is a different organization, right? So Matt had said this, RJ, you reiterated it. Finding an organization that aligns with your goals and your objectives and your audience. And so, for NFL, that's going to be different than MLB, just purely based on markets and on media and on frequency of games. But soccer is going to be different than hockey, right? So I think getting your strategy down to think about that. And then when you do a club deal, it doesn't mean that it's not national is the other thing. And I think, Matt, you can probably speak to that as well. But there are many different ways that any local team deal scales beyond the local market. And in fact, that's probably why we all talk about global partnerships now, because it's not just isolated to the market you're in. There are many different ways through using broadcast, social, digital, away game experiences, international rights that we can expand those. So I think, again, it's just sort of thinking about where you want to put your dollars in terms of who you're trying to reach. And then, quite frankly, just working with different teams that, sort of the common underlying goal of all of this is teams that are flexible and good partners back. So like Matt said, I would love nothing more than a brand to come to me and tell me, here is exactly who I'm trying to reach and what I want to do. And like, we would create a partnership for you. So Matt, I don't know if you have anything different to add.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, when it comes to national brands integrating more into the local markets, it's interesting. I think there's some brands that you can, while your objectives and your, core elements might remain the same, I think it's always great to have a little bit of flexibility to kind of lean in on the team. And every team, like Kristen said, is going to be different from one another, and their fan base is going to be different. And what resonates in, Washington, D.C. versus Las Vegas, where I've just been my last two stops, like, it's very different. You have a major market in Washington, D.C. It's much more government focused and federal based. And then if you've got Vegas, which is much more entertainment focused and tourism, base, I think that what resonates in both markets is going to be very, different. So I think it's okay for national brands to have some of that, the consistency for sure in some of their objectives. But I think being willing to not necessarily just do like a copy and paste across the board because it worked in one market, it'll work in the other. I think it's, relying on some of your team partnerships to help deliver the results you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Interesting question came in, and I like this one, but it's asking about sort of the in-venue forms of engagement that you're most excited about, right? Because, in this day and age, it's no longer, right, you're not looking at in-venue just by saying what the attendance was. It's very different. It's a very different, the in-stadium experience or in-arena experience is very different than it used to be. So how you're measuring engagement and what brands are seeing. So are there any developments that you're really excited about? And Matt, I'm going to ask you first but just because you seem like, Vegas is the place where I would guess there's plenty of innovation going on as part of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So last summer, the Vegas Golden Knights were voted by other industry individuals as the best in-game entertainment experience in all of pro sports. And sometimes the feedback that we get a lot is when you go to Golden Knights games, there's you go and you see a show and there happens to be a hockey game going on. And I think one of the good parts about what we do here is that it's very on brand for the market. I think you need to be authentic to your individual market, and everyone's going to be a little bit different. I think it's trying to find also new ways to provide value back with the fans and align brands and partnerships to some of those activations. I think there's a lot of best practices that are already existing out, throughout the industry. And I think it's okay to piggyback off of somebody else's good idea and then, tweak it a little bit and make it authentic to your team and to your market and to the brands that are looking to align with them. But as far as, new things that are coming out, I think you see them on social. I think, as an example, the lookalike cams that certain teams do. Is it the crying cam that I'm trying to remember which team did it. I know the Lakers, unfortunately, where they were on the receiving end, but it was like a filter that showed their fans crying. There's lots of in-game, whether it be on ice, and every team has to get a little bit, creative, because some things that you can do on field or on court you can't do on ice, or vice versa. And so I think it's just looking for some of those new ways to engage fans and on a game by game basis, and being flexible, throughout the season as it goes.
Yeah. RJ, anything that you picked up in the research on any of that? What I want to say is in-venue engagement.
I'll definitely defer to Matt and Kristen on this. But what we've heard from brands is they want more, in-person fan experiences. And so, I'm actually keen to hear what these guys have in the works. Yeah. But that's definitely something that resonates, and what we're hearing from the brand side.
Kristen, anyone that excites you?
I'm gonna throw a shout out to the Famous Group. We work with them here at the Broncos, and they do a lot of the cool stuff that Matt was talking about here. I think just the big thing is AI, right? That's all your camera filters, that's your lookalikes. So using that in a partnership lens to customize that, and then have your product integrated in what the AI filter is essentially, is super cool. I think generally speaking, you're going to see game day presentation continue to be something that every team strives to improve, because there are so many more choices now in terms of what you can do in the world, so many different ways you can consume sports, that getting people in venue is just one of many. And so while it's important for us to be able to connect with all of our fans, whether they're at a game or at home or on the road or listening on your flight on the way, to South Africa, like being in venue is real time and live. And so doubling down on that is really fun. And, I think there's some new AI ways that will be able to provide scale to partners that we haven't been able to do before.
Great. I'd love to keep going on these questions. We're out of time, unfortunately. So again, thank you, RJ, Kristen, Matt. Really appreciate all the insights that you shared. To our audience, just final reminders: check your email, 3:30 today, 4 o'clock. You're getting a link to On Demand. Share it with your colleagues. I know you want the full report, all the things that we've been talking about. There's a lot of stuff we didn't have time to talk about. Grab that report. It's in the event resources area. Just the PDF. Take some time, engage with it, come back and watch this again. Now that you heard or read through some of that, you'll also find the slides in event resources. You'll also find a link to the Adweek resource library. And finally, you're going to see a link to the Adweek webinar calendar. So take a look at that, sign up for an upcoming webinar. Lots of really interesting topics. Measurement is hot these days. It's what we seem to be getting a lot of webinars on because it's also top of mind for everyone. I know it was something we were talking about today. You'll see what's there. Sign up for an upcoming webinar. See what's available on demand. Again, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our sponsors from CORE, and thank you to our audience for taking time out of your busy day. And we look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming Adweek webinar. Thank you all.